The agenda, any additions or deletions? Not seeing any. Lloyd's moving the agenda. Vote. That's carried. Okay, public hearing. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing for bylaw 2023-08? Dustin is making that motion. Vote. All right. Public hearing is now open. Bylaw 2023-08. Kayleen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bylaw 2023-08 is proposed for the closure of an undeveloped road allowance here in the hamlet of Dunmore. And the application is submitted by Sandy Trickle of Gas City Metals on behalf of the landowner Lydia Trickle. And it's to acquire a 2.34 acre area of undeveloped road allowance or county road right-of-way. The applicant has not yet provided the county with a plan of survey that's been prepared by an Alberta land surveyor. The landowner's intention is to market the lands for sale, and CPR owns lands to the north of the undeveloped road allowance. Area A contains approximately 1.42 acres and abuts the northerly boundary of Plan 1412352 Lot 1. This parcel is zoned Hamlet Commercial District under the Land Use Bylaw. There are existing encroachments from the recycling business into this portion of undeveloped road allowance. Area B contains approximately 0.92 acres and abuts the northerly boundary of Plan 1412352 Lot 2. This parcel is zoned Hamlet Industrial District under the Land Use Bylaw. Similarly, there are existing encroachments from the recycling business into this portion of undeveloped road as well. Upon completion of the road closure process, the area of undeveloped allowance would be consolidated into the adjacent titles at the landowner's expense. Land acquisition will be transacted at market value at third reading of the bylaw. Proposed road closure has been advertised, and notice was sent to adjacent landowners and agencies advising of today's public hearing. Following the public hearing, should council wish to proceed, the road closure proposal will be forwarded to the Minister of Transportation for review and approval consideration. If the Minister accepts the road closure for approval, the bylaw will be brought back to council for second and third readings. Under Section 22 road closure of the MGA, it states that no road in a municipality that is subject to the direction, control, and management of the municipality may be closed except by bylaw. Before giving second reading to a bylaw that would close a road, a council must hold a public hearing with respect of the bylaw after giving notice. And no bylaw may be closed by the council of a municipality that is not a city unless the bylaw is approved by the Minister of Transportation before it receives second reading. Section 6.1.4 of the county's municipal development plan states that the county should acquire lands to create sufficient right-of-way to enable future roadway expansion where necessary or identified in a transportation master plan. Section 6.1.9 rail infrastructure states that the county should require development to be set back from rail operations in alignment with CP's guidelines for new development in proximity to rail. This limits impacts on development and reduces the risk of loss of life or damage to property should a derailment occur. The Director of Public Works, when we circulated this application, replied that Section 18 of the MGA assigns the responsibility for control and management of roads to the municipality. Public Works Services is not in favor of selling or divesting this undeveloped government road allowance. Road allowances should remain with the municipality for the purposes of future roadway or corridors for municipal infrastructure such as utilities. This undeveloped road allowance also provides additional setback from the railway for safety purposes. Typically, setbacks from the rail right-of-way are 30 meters. The Director of Corporate Services replied that land adjacent to logistic corridors such as rail and highways tend to lay dormant and have relatively low value until there is a need for expansion or widening. Since it is difficult to estimate when or if the land will be needed to expand corridors, continued possession allows for future control of such instances. TELUS replied that they have no objections. Fortis replied that they do not have any facilities and therefore they have no objection. City of Medicine Hat Electric replied they have no concern. City of Medicine Hat Planning and Development replies that the road closure has no impact to city infrastructure. The Town of Red Cliff replied that they have no comments. And Alberta Transportation replied that the proposal is subject to road closure requirements of the MGA. Once the public hearing is concluded, the bylaw package must be submitted to Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors. At the time of writing the report, no comments or objections were received from CP Rail. However, our Director of Municipal Services did receive a phone call from a gentleman with CP Rail last week, indicating that it's very unlikely that CP would permit a spur line to come off this location due to the proximity to the Dunmore Switch, which is just east of us by the grain terminals. At the time of writing the report, no comments or objections were received from any of the adjacent landowners, and the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment, a collective total of $35,200 to acquire the right-of-way, and that breaks down into Area A, which is adjacent to Lot 1, is $23,500, and the area adjacent to Lot 2 would be $11,700. An additional comment that if the undeveloped road allowance is to be closed and sold, it may cost the county more in the future to reacquire land should there ever be a future need. So with that, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation coming out of the public hearing today is that Council direct administration to submit bylaw 2023-08 to the Minister for approval.
Thank you, Kayleen. Does anybody have any questions for the planner from council? Robin?
Thank you. Kayleen, I guess my question is just more with regards to process then too. So am I correct to understand that we are not looking for second or third reading today? This is simply to have the public hearing. How do we make a decision coming out of a public hearing? Is it just a motion of council essentially that we're looking to make? Okay. And I could understand this if we were looking at having spur lines coming out, but if CP's already said that they wouldn't support the spur line, I see this as somewhat problematic. Is that the intent of having it as close to the tracks and wanting to take that space in is out of hopes that the spur line could be put in?
So through the chair, I think as part of the public hearing, that would be a question for the applicant. Ms. Treichel is here to answer questions as well. So
At this point, we're just looking for Kayleen. Does anybody else have any questions for Kayleen? Oh, go ahead, Keith.
So, I'm not sure if this is the right time to say this, but my thought is if we give this land up and we let it go to the landowner, would that ever, I'm always looking down the road and going, if we need access to the back side of that, I'm thinking in terms of fire or something, and is that going to hinder our ability to get back there? I'm trying to think of a future need for that land for the county, that's all. And because I'd rather keep it than sell it and then need it.
Okay. Dustin, do you have a question for the planner?
On the adjacent titles, so we'll just look east, is there a continuation of that road allowance behind them, or is it just stop at that intersection?
it stops at the intersection of that rear, we'll call it alleyway, I guess, and 11th Street. And then continuing over, I believe, is a continued widening of CP right-of-way on the other side.
So I guess in that question, if this wasn't there, it would be consistent with the other titles within the hamlet.
Correct. I guess with the addition that I think CP owns additional land adjacent to their right-of-way on the east side of 11th Street. So I think they actually have a wider right-of-way than the 60 feet that they have in this area.
Any other questions for the planner? Richard?
On the east side of I'll go with left-hand side of lot 1, which would, I guess, be west side. That doesn't just follow along the CP rail property line, it goes across at an angle. Do we know why that happened?
I'm being told by my neighbor here that it's due to a gas line.
Okay, any other questions for the planner? Not seeing any. Are there any comments from anyone for or against the bylaw? Sandy, do you have anything? Come up and take the, either one. And there's a button there so the speaker will turn on for you. Yeah.
Oh, my loud voice.
Don't worry,
Hello, everyone.
We can shut you off over here too. So
What's that?
we can shut you down over here. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was just more of an exploratory, like, in a sense, we had to put in the application in order for this conversation to come forward. So, for example, it would have been, I think, pretty much next to impossible to get any feedback from CP Rail unless it goes through a formal process, right? Because you can phone those people, and there's, Ali Maminovich, our neighbor, has said, he's above God, then there's God, and then there's CP Rail. So that's the order of business in Dunmore. So, anyhow, I was trying to make a joke here this morning. Anyhow, so yeah, at this point, it was just an exploratory conversation, and I'm not sure how the process works at the county level, because Keith, you brought forward your question about, you know, preserving the option for the county in the future. I had assumed that conversation happened before our application got approved, but obviously maybe there's still some questions. So, yeah, so I don't have anything definitive to tell you at this point other than, you know, we wanted to explore the option. We're not necessarily hard charging toward a, you know, to make that all happen. So I think there will probably be some conversation after today's meeting to, yeah, further discuss what some of the concerns and questions are. Sorry about that. Hang on.
All right. Here's a case of beer for the fridge.
What's that?
Case of beer anytime phone rings. So what you're saying, so the process is,
Yep. So we had to get to this point in order to generate all this conversation. Otherwise, it's,
we do, but
my
if you're not that serious about it, if we don't do second reading today, then it's done.
So what'll happen is that after the public hearing closes, then the document is forwarded to the Minister of Transportation for review and approval, then comes back,
for
and
the
then you do
second,
second and third.
yes.
So so applying to put development on, if the Minister of Transportation agrees for all this, and then second and third's done, it's up to the applicant to work with CP Rail to do those future developments. It's not up to Cypress County.
Okay, so we're done our steps just to get her to the next step.
And then, so the conversation needs to happen with the developer on those lands,
Okay,
Right.
because we're not the developer.
right.
But in a sense, you're correct in that this is sort of the point at which we need, you know, we need to decide, like, now that we've got all this information and we, you know, and we understand what the process, so now it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Are we moving forward with an application to Alberta Transportation? Or are we going back, you know, because I'm not the landowner. I have to discuss this with other people. So, you know, I think what we need to do is go back to our group and say, okay, this is the information that's come forward. Because the CP Rail information, like, that didn't come forward until, you know, yesterday, right? So now that we have that information, that sort of shifts the, you know, shifts the perspective, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Shane, you had a question?
It's probably back to Kaylee. Who owns this undeveloped road allowance? Is it the county or is it the CP?
County.
So the county owns the undeveloped road allowance. However, CP does have a titled parcel that they own, which is just north of where the road allowance kind of cuts east to west. So if I have a laser pointer somewhere. Thanks, Steve. So this portion here, maybe,
Give her one that
Nope.
doesn't work.
just a little bit to the east there, Dustin, yes. Yeah, so that little corner there is titled land owned by CP. So essentially, if there's not access via that diagonal road allowance, there is a potential that that parcel of land by CP could be landlocked. I mean, they'd still have access via their CP right-of-way, but not from a county road allowance.
Yeah, it's a bit of a jungle back there, just the way it's put together. It's,
Do you have another question?
I got a concern. Okay. I guess my concern, and it goes back to Kaylee there too, if we start selling off undeveloped road allowances, are we gonna start doing that throughout the whole county? Because there's a lot of undeveloped road allowances going through people's prairie and pasture land, and they'll be all coming in to start wanting to buy it. If we do it for one, we're opening up the door for all. So we gotta really watch our step here.
Blaine, you had a question?
Think what it was again. So the CPR still would hold a right-of-way though in between, so that 30 meters from theirs into that road allowance then, is that what I'm getting? Or would the land go all the way up to the track basically?
Yeah, so the CP right-of-way that's north of where the undeveloped road allowance proposed closure is, CP Rail has a 60-foot right-of-way through that area. So that accommodates their actual main line. And then there's also kind of a private access road in and around back there that they utilize as well. Right beside, yeah. And so I did go by there yesterday. And the area that the undeveloped road allowance is proposed to be closed is up on a bit of a ridge. And then CP Rail right-of-way is kind of a bit of a drop down below. So it's kind of interesting.
yeah.
Interesting back there. And the portion of undeveloped road is partially fenced into the Tricol's land. So it's kind of difficult to tell on site where the property boundaries begin and end.
So now I have a question, sorry, can I ask a question of sort of a planning process?
Nuts.
Well, no, it does bring up, it brings up the question of, so one of the issues we've had with being next to Cypress County right-of-way or road allowance and CP Rail is access to the back of our property. Like, so what's happened is, you know, we get characters who will try to be polite, but anyhow, you know, they drive up the back of that area and try to access our property. So whose responsibility, like, is it, does CP Rail have a certain amount of responsibility if there's issues to fence off their property boundary, like their right-of-way?
Nope.
There's no requirement at all.
Nope.
So even if
No
their
livestock,
access, yeah, so basically it's the landowner's responsibility to protect themselves from the CP Rail access road. Because it's the access road that causes the problem, not our property. It's their access road. Is that your understanding, Carolyn?
So if you have concerns with CP, you can contact them and discuss that. They have a public relations group that deals with that, to deal with landowners that are adjacent to CP Rail property.
Right. Now, because you guys are the adjacent landowner, we're technically not the adjacent landowner. We don't have any, like, if that's the case, that's where it gets a little bit complicated, because it's actually Cypress County is the neighbor, not us.
It's a road allowance, so it's not regularly owned land.
Got it. So it falls under a different category.
It's road allowance.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
It's an undeveloped road allowance.
Okay.
Okay. All right, is there any other questions for? Yeah, Keith?
So technically, just to help me understand, why do you want to purchase this?
At the time, so Keith, this has been a long process. My gosh, I think I started talking to planning back in January or maybe even December. I can't remember. But so at the time, we were engaged in a certain discussion with parties with respect to potential ownership, like us selling that land, and that came with a goal. They had a goal of potentially putting in a spur line. So the only way to do that is to access it from that right-of-way, like that road allowance. That's the most ideal position if you were going to put in a spur line. Now that we found out from Kim that CP Rail is saying ain't gonna happen, well, that totally changes the flavor of the reason behind the one of the main reasons behind the application, right? So,
So for clarity, do you wish to continue with the application, or do you wish to withdraw?
so do I need to make that decision today?
Well, because this is going to go forward, so afterwards, council make decision to forward because first readings happen, this is the public hearing, and then the application will go to the Minister of Transportation for consideration.
Okay, I guess in my conversations with Kayleen, maybe my understanding was that, we addressed any questions that came forward from council, and then I was under the impression I maybe had an opportunity to have, like, as I say, go back to my family and say, hey, this is what's been discussed. These are the issues that have come up. And so I was hoping to have, I guess, a little bit of breathing room to go, okay, yea or nay. I think we're leaning toward nay, and especially based on everything I hear today, I don't see we don't have any super compelling reason at this point to move forward with it. So if you want a decision today, then I guess my decision would be nay. But I was hoping to.
Because when an application is forwarded to the minister, they don't take it lightly.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's.
Oh yeah, no.
Take it lightly. So I just that's just the process, and just so council has all the information that they need to make a decision.
Yeah, for sure. So what you're saying is the council has to make a decision today as to whether we forward to the ministry or not. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, and I totally appreciate that, Terrell. No, I would not put forward an application willy-nilly. No, I recognize that. They need to know that it's a serious application. So in light of that context, then, no, I think that we're nay. Because as I say, a lot of this information just came up yesterday. I did reach out to family last night. We had some conversation about it. And, I said, obviously, I'm attending the meeting today, and if there's an opportunity to have one more conversation about it, fine. But if we're saying, no, we need to make the decision, then I think we sit on the side of nay. Yeah, sorry. Like I said, I didn't mean to waste anybody's time, but I understood that, we had to kind of go through the process in order to get to this point, so that's.
Yeah, that's the way it is, so that's no problem. You're not wasting time. We just want to know what we're going to do next.
Yeah, no, if you have to make that decision today, then I'd say nay, because it's not, there's not enough of it at this point. The reasons aren't compelling enough, and from what I hear on the council end, I think there are some significant concerns with moving that kind of application forward at this point, which I totally appreciate, because I'm a long-term thinker, not, we got to do this right now. No, you got to think about the long term.
We would have the opportunity to postpone to the next meeting, though, as well, if we so choose. If you don't want to make a decision today and want to have the ability for her to have that conversation, we could postpone it till the next meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So that just administration needs a direction, so it won't be forwarded on until administration gets direction.
Robin?
Just from a procedural standpoint, I'm a little bit hung up on, because right now we're debating the decision versus still the issue itself. But even if we were to postpone, that's one thing. But in order to send it to the ministry, would we not have to still pass second? Because you'd have to be approving something, because otherwise you're closing a public hearing and then waiting for new information to come back in. But when the public hearing is closed, like, to me, it makes sense to have second reading, and it either gets approved or denied. And if it's denied, we don't do anything. And if it's approved, we're not passing the bylaw by passing a third. I'm just confused on procedure here.
Kayleen?
Yeah, so it is a little bit different when we're working with road closure bylaws, because Alberta Transportation and His Majesty the King owns the roads, right? So they're not the counties to close. So when we file that application to Alberta Transportation, what Alberta Transportation is really looking for is a public record. So in reviewing that application, was there objection? Are there people in favor? And then they review that entire context, and then they provide back to the county whether it can proceed or not proceed. So it's kind of a dead stop up until we get that okay from AT, and then we bring it back.
So it says no second reading, or it just says that it cannot be passed as a bylaw until they approve it?
It has to go to AT prior to second reading.
If you remember correctly, we did one a year or so ago, and we did the second reading for it, and we got our fingers slapped and said, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's, yeah.
It's their it's their land. It's the King's, and so we just take care of it for them. And our legislative power is the MGA. So we can't, so it has to go to them after the public hearing. They determine yes or no, if it can have second and third.
So it's a little different than what we're used to doing, that's why we got.
Oh, yeah, no, I took, and when I first contacted Pine, they're like, Sandy, road closures are very complicated. I'm like, okay, no, not a problem.
Leslie Ann?
And just a point of a clarification, I just wanted to make note, it was my error on 6.1 that I had second and third reading in brackets, just because that's typically how we do a public hearing. But really at 6.1, you'd be debating the motion, whether to forward the bylaw or to forward it to minister or not.
That's just a auto document word problem. It's not your issue. Exactly. Just auto document.
Okay, is there any more questions for the applicant? Not seeing any. Does the applicant have anything else for council?
I don't think so. As I say, if you know, Carolyn's putting forward that, you know, obviously the most efficient point today is whether we're prepared to move forward in the application or not. You know, just because the nature of my situation with the family, I would prefer the option to be able to have a quick, you know, say, hey, this is what came out of this. What do you guys think? But at the same time, you know, I'm pretty comfortable saying I think it's 99% likely we will not move forward. So I don't know, Carolyn, I don't quite know what to say, right?
So the thing is just, what you've done is shared what your thoughts are.
Yep.
The public hearing will close.
Yep.
Then council will debate
Yep.
the recommended motion, and they will determine if they will vote on the motion that's
Yep.
recommended, or propose, council would propose another.
Right, postponement.
Motion, however they wish to
Right.
proceed.
Yep.
So right now, just sharing your thoughts with council on how you wish the next steps to go forward. And so it's crystal clear for them to be able to make a decision to help with the application.
Sure. So back to Dustin's point. So postponement is obviously the, you know, I mean, I feel badly because I feel that's maybe a bit of a time waste, but that would obviously give me the full option to go back to our side of it and say, okay, look, this is what's come forward. What, you know, so that when we go, if we go back to this, we're 100% clear what the decision is. So that's my final comment.
So another question, Mr. Chairman, is how long, would you request of council for their consideration? Is it in a month's time, 2 months' time, 2 weeks' time?
No, I think short, I think all I need is I would say the tightest timeline possible.
By
like 2
next
weeks.
Wednesday type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. No, we don't need bags of time.
Okay.
Because I think there's an opportunity, you know, Kayleen and Kim are very everybody's quite responsive at the county level. So I think if we have any more questions or whatever, then I think it's easy to make that decision fairly quickly. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'll be.
Just so everybody's crystal clear on the request of the applicant, just wanted to flesh that out.
Yeah, that's all. So if that makes sense, that's appreciated. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you kindly, folks.
Thank you very much. So the public hearing for bylaw 2023-08 is concluded and no further submissions will be accepted. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please? Blaine? Vote. That one was a little different because a little different situation. Okay, public hearing is closed. Minutes from the last meeting. Everybody read them? Michelle's moving them. Vote. Lloyd. Okay, that's carried. All right, now we're on to the confusing one, 6.1. So we're looking for a motion, we're not looking for second or third reading.
Correct. So Mr. Chairman, on page 3, the recommended motion that council direct administration to submit bylaw 2023-08 to the Minister of AT for approval And then subsequent to that would be, if they're cool with it, then it'd come back for second and third.
Dustin?
I would make the motion to postpone this till the next meeting. And give the family time to give us an answer on what their intentions are before we even make a decision on it.
You have a question?
Yeah, we could do that, but I'm against it because we're going to open up a can of worms on all these undeveloped road allowances of people wanting to buy then. If we do it for one, we're going to do it for everybody, and we're going to have a lineup out there because I'll be one of them then.
Robin?
Yeah, I'm with Shane on this one. I like the idea of the spur line access, but I think that in order to make that sustainable, it's almost like the county needs to have a plan to have almost like a access road spur that we have multiple spur lines that would come off of if we had a commercial area that we were encouraging that kind of development. If we are, going to work with individual landowners to have access to CP right up against their rail line in hopes that they're going to have individual spur lines, that's not going to be something that we're going to see develop anyway. So for multiple reasons, including what Keith brought up with regards to access to the back for fire or anything like that, I would be prepared to vote on rejecting this now, just because I don't think that it's good practice and I don't think that it serves our best interests at all. And long-term wise, I don't think it serves the interests of the business community long-term as well, because I don't think that the approach is sustainable.
Steve?
Listening to the information provided in the public hearing, the corporate services could have an alternative solution could be leasing the property for a term that would allow for future expansion and not take away the logistic corridor inability to expand, and we could probably have that done by Friday as an option.
Blaine?
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I know there's other road allowances out there that property owners have leased, but I think the family needs to be made aware that it's their responsibility to, I think that was part of their concern, was the access to it and who's looking after the, what do you call it, the encroachment on it or whatever, or the containment of it. So it's their responsibility to make the fence around their property.
Any other comments? I have a motion on the floor to postpone. Robin?
So the last comments, both Steve's and Blaine's, that doesn't necessarily change though the question of are we looking at pursuing going to the minister trying to close it down, or are we saying, hey, because to me, everything that we're hearing about fencing or whatever can all be achieved through our normal government process, people coming and talking to corporate services and leasing the road allowance or whatever. We're talking about actually closing down a road allowance and whether or not that's in the best interest of the county long term. If we lease it, at least we can take it over again down the road. If we sell it, now we have to reacquire it if we ever need it down the road. To me, I think that the application is for the purpose of purchasing the land. I don't hear us sitting here going, that sounds like a good idea. We're looking at different ways of giving them what they want that doesn't necessarily involve selling it. So if that's where we're going, let's defeat it, and then let's let staff find a way to provide that access for that extra 60 feet until we need it down the road.
Richard?
Yeah, so the way I was reading it also was Dustin has a motion on the floor. If it gets defeated, then somebody else can make a motion to allow the purchase of it or not allow, and then we can move on. So.
That's, I have a motion on the floor to postpone it. Is there any other questions on the motion to postpone? Not seeing any? Vote. Okay. That is defeated. Sorry, Dustin, I had to laugh at that. Was your motion? The only green one up there wasn't yours. All right, Robin?
So my motion would be to defeat the, or to reject the application.
Okay. Any questions or comments on it? Seeing the applicant was 99% against it, I think that's pretty safe motion, so. Les, you had a question?
Yeah, I think for clarity-wise and maybe going forward, I think if Councillor Kirby-White would be okay with it, I would propose that that's the motion that's made and council can defeat the motion. Yeah.
Whoa, you confused me on that. Which motion? Oh, the motion up here.
It's a positive negative, so the motion is there and council can choose to approve the motion or defeat the motion.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It's just a little bit clear.
The council directs administration to submit the bylaw 2023 to the Minister of Transportation for approval. So if you make that motion, we vote against it. It's exactly what you want, it's just, it's on paper already.
Yeah, totally. I guess I'm just, to me, yeah, they both achieve the same thing. I think that at the end of the day, as long as it's clear that there were reasons why, even if the applicant was 95% in favor of looking at it and talking with family, I think there are good reasons that council is looking at this and saying, you know, this may not necessarily serve the best interests of the county, which is why I think it could also be a positive from the county position to state it as a reject. But you know what, for the sake, this is all on the record anyways, I don't mind whatever is simplest. If it is just making the recommended motion and then rejecting it, maybe it's a little less clarity from the ratepayer's perspective. What's easiest for you?
It doesn't matter what's easiest. It's procedurally, this is kind of the proper way to do it is, and it's not something that this council typically does, but I think going forward, we've learned that it's okay to defeat a motion, but I mean, and it's completely up to you, Councillor Kirby-White, whatever motion you would like to make.
Okay. Sure. I'll amend my motion to the recommended motion, and yeah, I guess for the record, I will be voting against my own motion, but yeah, that works. So the recommended motion is the council direct administration to submit bylaw 2023-08 to the Minister of Transportation for approval.
Okay, everybody knows what's going on here? All right.
I know, but I'm still confused why we have to make the recommended motion. Why aren't we council, aren't we able to make any?
Well, it's still doing the same thing, it's just, it's a recommend.
I understand it's still doing the same thing, but it's,
The reason why Leslie Ann's taking, she just went through a whole course on all of this stuff, so.
so
she's
this is
trying-
basically a procedural thing.
Yes.
Okay.
You are correct. And quite often, when the motion is read out in the council agenda package, lots of other municipalities quite often don't alter from the motion that was put forward. Council definitely can. It's sometimes just procedurally, it's just easier if council votes one way or the other to defeat the motion. And it's okay to defeat a motion, right?
I just want to make one comment. Okay, I understand where this is coming from. So this is basically coming from staff. The motion is basically coming from staff. And as council, we're going to make the decision to say,
Yep. Okay. There you go.
Can we just, being that we're doing it this way, can we do a recorded vote on it just to be, because I want to make sure that it's just clear on where that is.
All right, does anybody have any more questions? Vote. Just we always vote yes, because we make the motion to what we want. There we go. That is not carried.
99% sure.
Yeah, well, we're 100% sure we did it right there. All right, 7, CAO report, Terlyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you on page 31 is the CAO report, and it goes, it's quite extensive. Is there any questions?
Motion to accept the report, Shane, and then start with your question.
You want to take a break first before I get into my long list?
No, I'm trying to get this over with, so.
All right. First one. I've dealt with some more complaints about the black and white, where we just finished doing a patch and it didn't even last a month. And it's already blowing up. The ratepayers are getting frustrated and really frustrated that we're going back 2 or 3 times a year to the same hill to fix it. I wish we could fix it properly, that the people on site would make a decision, we can add pit run, just not put cold mix on top of dirt, and pray to God that'll last more than a couple of weeks. There was also a bunch of rutting on the black and white, which I did talk to staff about. But when I went through on Friday, there was a bump signs at each end of about 2 to 3 kilometers, but there's not a bump. It should have had rough road ahead for the next 2 or 3 kilometers, because it's really got some severe rutting in there, and I don't know why the bump signs were there. It's just confusing to the motor public. Also, I've had many requests now for grading to cease on some of the county roads, especially because of the dust. It's really dry. Once we get the ruts, there's less dust, because now people are finding their, because it's so dry, the cattle are starting to get pneumonia, dust pneumonia. And that they say you don't have to come every 3 weeks because the road is dry. We haven't had any rain, just that. Roll out, the ruts are there. What I call a rut is that gravel's just being pushed aside. And this hard pan where everybody's driving in, this less dust. So I've had a few people ask for that. I don't know if we can or what our deal will be on that. Also, I'd like to, that new patch machine that we had to have, is it being used or is it being rented out, or what's the use on that thing?
Ken's the one that takes care of it.
Yeah, Ken, there.
Through the chair, we have begun to make some planning for doing the hot mix patching. So we've been focusing on the cold mix repairs at this stage. So right now we're going to start to do that in some of the hamlets and our problem areas where we have hot mix placed. That's where that product or that equipment's going to work well for us. So we do have plans to be out in the next couple weeks.
And it hasn't been rented out yet?
No, it has not.
Speaking of dust patches, on Range Road 75 coming off of Highway 1, there's been holes there for many years and they're getting worse and worse. If we can have a look at that. On your reports here, the old Trans-Canada paving, how are we making along there, Ken, with the repairs? And
Through the chair. We're still in the post-construction stage with the consultant and the contractor, so there's that's kind of where it's at right now, so it hasn't been fully completed. There's some deficiencies yet to be completed on that project.
Next, up farther where we did the work on that old Trans-Canada highway, the grader could go, there's one place where the culvert really settled and it is a really big dip. It's a great job, but it's just that one there it really sunk. And that is about it.
All right, it's time for lunch now. Jeez.
Had to bring it up, I got concerns,
I'm just razzing you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for the CAO report? Not seeing any. Shane made the motion for the CAO report. Vote. You're not sorry.
We didn't pass them sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to be game.
All right, Reeve and council reports. My report is on there. Not much to add to that. We'll start with Richard. This should take us through till lunch now.
Yeah, you guys keep forgetting about the senior and how hard you work them, so think about that in the future. May 24th, FCSS regional meeting in Tabor. I went up there with Michelle and Kim. May 29th, I realize this isn't part of the counselor duties, but we did put money in and start the Cypress Community Foundation, and so I attended the foundation picnic at the Carriage House. That was where the other foundations also presented checks to the people in the area, and I presented a check to the Dunmore Equestrian Center for their Heritage Days, to assist them in their Heritage Days celebration, and that was for $5,000. On May 30th, I drove to Warner for the Milk River Watershed Council of Canada meeting. We had the AGM in the morning and then the regular meeting in the afternoon. Next day, I chaired the Verge Economic Development meeting that was held in council chambers. That's about it. I do want to compliment the Public Works for fixing up some manholes that were really sticking out badly in Desert Bloom, especially on the road to the golf course. They're now flush, so people that drive sports cars don't have to drive around them now. That would be me included. Thank you for that. And that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Robin?
I attended my last FCM meeting in Toronto a week and a half ago. As a part of the executive, we had VIP meetings with the Prime Minister of Canada, Jagmeet Singh, Melissa Landsman with the Conservative Party of Canada, as well as Elizabeth May. Our meeting with the Prime Minister actually went really well. We learned some things that were relevant moving forward. We spent about 45 minutes with him, and one of the things that he disclosed is that moving forward, that a lot of infrastructure funding is going to be tied to the level of aggressiveness that municipalities target or tackle housing affordability and access. Part of my questions to him and the conversation that we had was really advocating for the voice of rural and how tying infrastructure spending specifically to affordable housing projects is not really something that works for rural municipalities, because infrastructure is front-ended. It's not always the most affordable, and our ability to do and achieve quantities of scale in order to have a profitable project, or at least a sustainable project, is challenging. So we had some good dialogue with regards to that. Similar conversations with Mr. Singh, Ms. Landsman, and Ms. May. So it was a good week, and there were 2,900 members that attended from across Canada, and next year is in Calgary. So that is my report.
Thank you. Keith?
At this point, all I did was council meeting, and since then, nothing. So I don't have more to report.
Michelle?
I had a fairly busy since the last council. Had a couple of Cypress View meetings, a board meeting and a policy meeting. I had the spring regional, as Richard said. It was the first in-person one we've done since COVID, and it turned out to be great. One of the things that came out of that was they said that they're worried about Tabor and losing some industry because there's no housing for people to come and work there. So that was the big thing I got out of that. I attended the Dunmore Community Association ribbon cutting. The food was great. The facility was lovely. The band was good. It was a good time. I also just had last week FCSS AA meeting in Edmonton. And out of that one, let's see, from the provincial update for that was that on April 1st is when the increase of the $5 million that the province gave FCSS AA takes effect, and it'll be prorated to the beginning of January, and it works out to about a 4.5 increase in FCSS funding. And if there is all municipalities who have an FCSS board are getting that. But if they can't afford to match the 20% that the municipalities have to put in, they don't have to sign the amendment and can kind of opt out of it for a year. Oh, and I better mention that the Schuler Centennial is coming up on July long weekend. And everybody's pretty excited and, you know, kind of left things, I don't know. It's good. It's coming along, and we'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Shane?
Had our favorite regional landfill meeting. We're looking at buying a water truck. We need a water truck to keep the dust down, as all of a sudden we know that dust can become an occupational health and safety issue. So we're looking at we gave them a small budget to look for a used water truck. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just with a spray bar to keep the dust down and water all around out there. The composting, they're got the screener. They're taking a lot of the bags out, the garbage out. That material may end up going just back into the landfill that still has the bags in, but the clean stuff, the outfit is taking it in exchange for the use of their screener. So we're trying to, going along, figuring out, you know, at what rates and how it's screening and that is. So it's a good trial run, and it's not costing us nothing. They will have to bring in the wood chipper. We got a really big pile of wood out there, and to grind up all the wood and make it into chips, and it gets mixed in with the compost. So we're looking at doing that. Getting a couple of quotes. Calgary isn't back yet. That is just all our local garbage and going in there. Other than that, it seems to be going all right. I also attended the Dunmore ribbon cutting ceremony of their new little center over there. And what was really nice, that the Dunmore Community Association recognized the commitment and the volunteer work that Deputy Reeve Oster did. He was not there for it, but they really complimented him on all the volunteer work that he did there, running equipment and helping along with the site. And it was really nice to see that he got the recognition for doing that instead of getting beat up on other issues. But it's just nice to see that he appreciated your work, Richard, and hats off to you for all your work out there. And other than that, just had a lot of phone calls about roads and dust and lack of rain and lack of rain and lack of rain, and that's it.
So your position, you're doing the rain dance out there? Or
God dang right.
Dustin?
I learned something really interesting. The rain dance is actually to thank the gods for the rain, not to ask them for it. So, fine native fellow I know told me that. So, tidbit of information there. Not a whole bunch for me. Dealt with a few people down on the 120 dip, just about some finalizations for the creek diversion that they did down there. And then a few complaints again about Range Road 65, mostly due to it just being really greasy from that product we put on. Had some asks if they can overlay gravel on it to firm it up, and I was going to ask that question. I didn't know the answer to it, so I guess I'm asking that question.
Yeah, we'll look at the condition and how much gravel surfacing is on there right now and look at adding some.
We got 1.5 inches of rain on it yesterday, so it'd be real interesting to go look at it today.
Blaine?
Not terrible busy, but had a few things going on. On May 24th, met with a Welsh resident to go over some concerns that they had there, and I'm contact with staff to try to how can we resolve some of the issues that he's got. May 25th, had an Urban Ag Society meeting. They had a really successful year with ice rental, concession, and lounge, but unfortunately, their rink manager had to resign due to health injury or health situation. So, but they have hired a new guy. A replacement has been hired, so hopefully that guy will be able to continue on the good work. May 26th, attended the Dunmore Event Center grand opening. That was a really nice event, and reiterate what Shane said. They were really, the people there were really thankful for what the county and all the other sponsors have been doing, helping them out with. And then yesterday, me and Richard and John Roderman met with the library board to go over some of the progress of the Urban Resource Center and some of the color schemes that we're looking at. So yeah, things are going well down there. It's moving right along.
Thank you, Lloyd?
Yes, I attended the landfill meeting, and I just, when Shane was talking about the water truck, I got a lesson on pricing and Best Buy for equipment, and I learned a lot in about 3 minutes, so it was good. I attended the Dunmore Community Ribbon Cutting. It was really good, and just an added, they also thanked Tara Lynn and Leslie Ann for all the work they did with financing for them there, along with Richard. It was really good to hear that for the three of you. I attended on the 4th to the Elkwater Community Association AGM, and there was a lot of concerns brought up, and one of the concerns was that they wanted to see if the county could help get crosswalks markings at the 5-way stop, and staff is going to look into it and get a hold of Peter, I guess, and it is the park, but if the county can send something. And just lots of phone calls on some ongoing issues out in the county, but other than that, it's been quiet.
Hey, Shane, you forgot something?
Yes, I wanted to give a hats off to our staff again on, they held a business gathering here at our council chambers of all different businesses in the county. And when I went for ice cream at one of our new businesses in 7 persons, the owner was really happy with it. He attended it, thought it was great. He learned some stuff and even how to get some funding for staff. He thought it was very useful, and he thought staff did a great job, and it was really nice to see.
Hey, Richard?
One thing I forgot to comment on was, Shane, I threw your name out there to Gord Reynolds, Town of Bow Island, and Stacy Burrows, County of 40 Mile, because they're trying to move forward on landfill stuff, and I told them that you could definitely tell them what doesn't work. And also, I guess, now we're out here, maybe you can entice them to come to Red Cliff. So if you could, you guys can work on a price for them that maybe it won't be worth their while to do one there. So.
Okay, any questions on the reports? Dustin?
I'll move them.
Perfect.
I just find it funny, everybody's paying compliments and everything today, and I really appreciate that. I just always throw Richard's name into the barrel for spam emails. That's all I do.
Nice guy. All right, motion on the floor to accept the reports. Vote. That's carried. Okay, we'll take a 2-minute break before we go into our delegation. Check that air fast. All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Everyone can hear me okay? Yeah, perfect. We'll just do some introductions for the three of us up here. So I guess I'll go first. So for those of you I don't know, my name is Tracy Stroud. I am the Apex Regional Innovation Network Manager of Southeast Alberta. So I oversee our programming for the Apex RIN that we're going to talk about more in just a little bit.
And hi, my name is Chelsea Ayersman. I'm the manager of the Center for Innovation at Medicine Hat College, and I co-chair the Regional Innovation Network with Tracy.
And my name is Sean Blood. I'm the general manager of Community Futures Entrepreneur, and we are the delivery agent for the RIN contract for the funding we get through Alberta Innovates.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Chelsea. And so myself too, I should mention as well that Apex is actually not a standalone entity, we're a collaborative partnership, and so I am technically a Community Futures Entrecorp employee as well. And we are all so thankful for this opportunity to present on Apex, the Regional Innovation Network. Our core purpose of why this network exists is to help tech and knowledge-based companies. So these are the companies doing really unique and novel things in Southeast Alberta. And we are always excited to present on the services that we offer because we want companies to be aware that these services are available to them. So the RINs have been around for over a decade, and before that there was this opinion that if you were a tech or novel innovator, you had to move to a larger center or out of the province even. And we have shown that that's not the case. We can provide supports to companies where they are, wherever they are in Alberta and here in Southeast Alberta as well. So myself, just a quick little background. I have had the opportunity to work with companies in Southeast Alberta for over a decade now, and I can tell you that innovation does happen here. We have some amazing companies doing amazing things, but they're quite humble and they don't like to brag about it. So sometimes that's part of our role is to create that awareness about what is happening for their companies and what's happening in the region. And I'm going to present first today, but Chelsea is going to join me towards the end of the presentation and speak more about some of the new supports that are happening at the Center for Innovation that entrepreneurs can access as well. But all of us here, we really just want to help companies to navigate the many innovation supports that are available to business owners in Southeast Alberta. And so our only ask today is that you please share this information with companies that can benefit from them. There is no cost to our services for companies. There is no cost to the county for our services. This is something that is funded primarily by Alberta Innovates. So before I go into what those supports are, I just want to give a little more background about the regional innovation networks that exist in Alberta. So this is something unique for Alberta. Regional innovation networks, we are more commonly known as RINs. So I apologize, we use a lot of acronyms. At any moment, feel free to stop me and say, what is that acronym if I haven't explained it? But that is one that we'll use throughout. So RINs, and there's actually 8 RINs across the province. So they're supported by Alberta Innovates, which is the largest research and innovation agency in the province. They, as I mentioned, they're primarily funded by Alberta Innovates, but some are have a little bit different model. Calgary and Edmonton, Grand Prairie, their municipalities are also a major funder for them. But of the 8, I do want to mention that 6 are actually rural and only 2 are urban. And so the majorities of them are this rural model. And the rural model actually started first, and then Calgary and Edmonton came on board because this collaboration model really works. But the main thing about this is that no matter where an entrepreneur lives in the province, they can get access to supports. So there's no community in Alberta that is left behind with this model. So for us, our RIN for Southeast Alberta is called Apex. And even though my office is in Medicine Hat and Chelsea's office is in Medicine Hat, we support the entire region. So from Oyen in the north to Bassano in the west and all the way down to the United States border. And as I mentioned, we exist to support the startup and growth of innovative and technology-oriented businesses. We are community-based networks that are entrepreneur-focused. So what is considered innovative? Because I know this is a bit of a buzzword nowadays. You hear innovation, innovative all over the place. For us, it's businesses that are creating unique and novel products and services for Alberta, better yet for Canada, and better yet for the world. So if it's unique and novel for the world, this is the best outcome, and often we're helping companies. It might start off locally, but we're trying to get them to be able to export and reach those customers worldwide. And why that's important is that we know these innovators create high-paying jobs and they help to diversify the economy. And as I mentioned before, Apex is not a standalone organization, it is a network. And so the organizations you're seeing on the screen are the governance committee. So there's 5 organizations who provide guidance to the RIN, and all of these organizations work together to support innovators. And we also work with all the economic development stakeholders in Southeast Alberta to do this as well. So I want to give a big thanks to Beth for helping to invite us here today, and also with Teresa Hardiker for her ongoing support of the work we do. And there's 3 of us up here today, but make no mistake, there's more of us, and we are a network. And so if you take only one thing away from this presentation today, know that there's a team of people that want to see entrepreneurs in Southeast Alberta succeed, and we are here to help. And even if a company is sent to us and they're not considered innovative, we will still make sure that they get to supports and services that can help them and help their business. Of course, our time is focused on the innovators. And so just a few examples of some of the companies in Southeast Alberta. In Redcliffe, we had a pharmacist who developed a new natural health supplement, and it's flying off the shelves. So she's grown into the United States and is really, it's really taking off. So that's one example. Another one is Kineticence, was a chiropractor who partnered with an IT professional to create this system that can scan the body and tell where the aches and pains are, and can do that assessment without relying on a visual assessment. Their company has really taken off. They are in 12 different countries, 8 different languages with their product of service, and they're also working with many NFL teams as well. And another one is Tradworm Industries right here in Cypress County. Roxanne actually just presented last week. We were at the Inventors, the biggest innovation event across the province, and she got up and presented her company to a bunch of potential investors, so we're very excited for her. She is a company that when she started, it was so new that she wasn't considered agriculture, but she wasn't considered fertilizer, and they really didn't know what category to place her in. And she is farming worms and selling the soil that comes from worm poop. That's what it is, but it is like a natural fertilizer. And when she started, she was just selling these individually to local customers, but now her company makes money 4 different ways, and one of the biggest ways is through the process that she has developed to take garbage and make it into soil. And so really seen a lot of growth on her company. But sometimes, tech I think is pretty obvious. When someone creates a new software, a new app, that's pretty obvious, but sometimes the innovation is coming from the process itself. So those are all just different examples of types of companies that we've helped. But how do we help innovators like Roxanne? So here are some of the entrepreneurship supports we provide together. So we provide referrals to some of the best innovation coaches and programs that there are in Alberta. Some of these programs, Alberta Innovates has paid for global business coaches to come to Alberta and provide these services, and so they're the best of the best. These programs run from early stages, such as I have an idea, and so that individual who's just getting started on their entrepreneurial journey, all the way to existing companies that are looking to scale up something new that they haven't tried before and reach that new market potential. So a couple really good examples of this. I'm not going to touch on all of these, but one of them is SVG Thrive. So it is an ag tech accelerator, and they help early stage companies become market and investor ready. So this was the organization that Roxanne pitched for just last week. They helped her get ready and to this point. And again, that the cost of that service where in the past this would have been thousands of dollars for her to access this was covered by Alberta Innovates, and she was able to access it for free and get that expertise. So Roxanne has just completed that program, and we're really excited to see where she goes from here. But also other supports that are available, and even at the local level, we do have a technology development advisor. He's an Alberta Innovates employee, but he is in Medicine Hat. He's actually at the Community Futures EntreCorp office, and so he provides some of that expertise right here locally. And then there's ongoing programs. So there's ongoing grants for companies in this space, and Alberta Innovates has a large majority of them, commonly referred to as the Big Five. And so they're smaller amounts from $10,000 just for that entry level work with IP providers and things like that, all the way up to $100,000 for product demonstrations. And so sometimes I've seen companies even be able to work with municipalities to demonstrate their technology, and this funding helps them to do that. We also host a variety of innovation events and sponsor a variety of events in this space. And we look for events that are going to help business owners and provide some kind of training or educational component and some tie-in with innovation. A good example is we're very excited to be a sponsor for the Cypress County Ag Connections Conference. So we were very excited when Beth brought that forward to us, and looking forward to that event in November. Again, we're not the lead of that event, but we do see the importance of supporting it for the region. And we do put on our own sessions as well. So we do have an upcoming rural investor education training series starting next week, and that is available province-wide, but it's really for those who want to know how to invest in these tech and knowledge-based companies. What do you look for? And with equity options now, it's not just about putting in cash. You can put in expertise and still take an equity return. So the instructor, Brooke Harley, she is an actual former angel investor, and so she's the one who teaches this course. And again, that training is free of cost, and we're really looking to create the awareness of that offering, and in the hopes that more people will invest in rural companies who are going down this path. So all of our offerings are available at apexalberta.ca/events, and we encourage you to take a look or share it with business owners, because again, most of those events are either low cost or free. Another thing we do for entrepreneurs is we support them by sharing their stories. As I mentioned, we have very humble entrepreneurs. They're doing great things, but they have trouble talking about themselves. So sometimes we give that extra nudge. So we share their story through videos and award nominations, and it provides exposure to them. And sometimes it's the chance for them to meet that customer who could really take them to the next level, a potential investor, or even a strategic partner, ultimately helping them grow. And finally, in addition to company supports, another area that is priority for us is to support projects that enhance the innovation ecosystem. So these are projects that create an environment for business growth and innovation to occur. And so one I want to touch on is our remotely piloted aircraft system, RPAS for short, our drone project. And so this is now an Alberta-wide initiative, but it came from Southeast Alberta. We conducted local aerospace and defense industry consultations in the beginning of 2021. And the work we did there actually spawned the need to support the RPAS sector across the province. So the companies in our region, we found that they were growing and they were hiring, and they just needed a little bit of extra support to get them to that next level. And we found out that they were working with others across the province, and there was a lot of synergies. And so this past year, we received funding to take that work we were doing locally and bring it across the province. And there is a huge opportunity in this sector. So this is a multi-billion-dollar sector that is growing. It's growing fast in North America, and in Canada, really the main provinces involved are Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta. And Alberta has a lot of room for growth, and we're poised to grow this sector and do it very well. Part of the reason for that is like the drones themselves, there's tech there and there's innovation happening there, but there's also innovation happening when we combine drones with agriculture, and we combine drones with oil and gas, and we can combine drones with safety and public security. We're seeing all of these innovations happen cross-sectorial, and that's why it is such an exciting industry for us. So I'm not going to go into the entire strategy. I've brought some more information that I'll pass out on that as well. But part of this work also included an inventory of what was happening in the 26 post-secondaries across the province. And we did that work with Medicine Hat College. We're so happy to have the college leading the way on this as well. So I'm going to leave it at that for now, but I'm going to pass it on to Chelsea just to talk a bit more about what's happening at MHC.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm privileged to sit as the co-chair on the Regional Innovation Network with Tracy, and this is something that's new. It adds capacity to connecting industry and entrepreneurs in our region with resources across the province, as well as promote the resources that we have available here in southeastern Alberta. So the Center for Innovation is our applied research space on campus. And so I know we always have to define innovation, so I'll define applied research too. So when I'm talking about applied research, I'm talking on focusing on solving practical problems, using innovative knowledge or new technologies to create or improve processes, products, and services. And all of these practical problems need to come to us by a partner. And that's really important because it ensures that as soon as the research is done, there's someone there ready to implement that work. And for the college, as a comprehensive community college, that's our mandate. We can do research, but it needs to be regionally driven. It needs to be this applied research approach. So that's a really important focus for us. So I'll tell you a little bit about some of the projects you might be interested in. So a small project that we're doing this summer, we're monitoring barley crop with a drone. We're flying it, mapping out the crop, once every 3 to 4 weeks to determine some pretty basic things. Can we use a multispectral camera, pretty basic on most of the drones that you can purchase, to identify dry spots? can we use it to determine the damage created by leftover flax in the new crop? And can we use that information to make a decision for next year? Is it worth the time and money to spend cleaning it up more appropriately, or are the areas of the crops, not damaged enough to make it worthwhile? So these are all things that we're looking at with that project. Another project comes to us from the county of 40 Mile. So they had some concerns about wind turbines and their proximity to airstrips and their impact on agricultural practices like crop spraying. So this summer, I'm going to be hiring a research assistant, and that research assistant will be doing a literature review. So basically what that means, they're going to review all of the other research that's already been conducted around wind turbines in this space. And then they're going to summarize that for us, provide us with some best practices, as well as identify gaps that we can then use to identify where we should be doing research in the future. So those are two quick examples of some of the projects where we're looking to find solutions for folks in southeastern Alberta. So my ask would be, what are your problems and how can we help? Because Apex Alberta, Medicine Hat College, we are all willing and ready to support our region in innovation. So thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions? That was a great job on the presentation. Yeah. What's that? Oh, go ahead, Kim.
I have a quick question. We've been working with Alberta Parks on the densification of the wooded area around Elkwater. And I was wondering, because you were talking about, and I've had conversation with my brother about using your drones for densification, and would that be something that'd be possible to do in a wooded area, so you can look at best practices and wood loading, I guess it would be, or fire loading, and would that be something that would be possible, or is it something that's happening right now in other areas?
So I think that it's a valid project that we could take forward. I can't say exactly what's happening, but I know that drones are being heavily used, particularly for firefighting in forested areas. So if that project were to come forward, we would have conversations and we would likely explore the literature to determine what has been done and are there gaps, is there something that we can support in.
So who has to bring that forward then?
Anyone? Yeah, just reach out anytime. We'll set up a conversation. It'll probably be with myself for now. And we just look to scope out what kind of project we're looking at, where some of the resources are, and if we have the resources for it, or maybe the benefit of the Regional Innovation Network is tying into all of the other post-secondaries across the province. And there's really incredible work being done in multiple areas at colleges, particularly in this applied research industry-focused space. So there's some focused on forestry specifically. They might be my first contact.
Okay, thanks. Blaine, you had something?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious on your funding model, like where does your money come from? And so for a project like that, so would we have to hire you and pay you for that, or how does that actually work?
So funding is fun. Multiple areas. So the applied research connecting is free. This is what we do as part of the Regional Innovation Network. We connect you across the province and can possibly tie into some grant funding. The applied research, if it's being done kind of solely at the college, we would look to explore grant funding. Oftentimes there is some fee put in by industry, but at a pretty small percentage of overall project cost. Most often it comes from grants either through innovation side or through various research funding bodies, mostly federal government level, but innovation is primarily provincial.
Any other questions? Keith?
So you kind of piqued my interest here a little bit when you talked about the barley crop. What kind of things are you involved with as far as monitoring crops in, say, in irrigated hay, dryland hay, dryland cropping? What projects have you been involved in there?
So I'll first mention that the Center for Innovation opened in October, so we're pretty new. Really, so other than the barley crop this summer is one of the first projects that we have off the ground. So we're very new to this space. But with the Regional Innovation Network connecting to all of those other post-secondaries, like Lethbridge College is doing a lot of work in irrigation. Olds College obviously has a very strong agricultural presence in which they're doing applied research. We know that the agricultural community is strong in our region, so we expect to support this space, but we don't necessarily need to compete with those other areas. So what we would look to do is, once again, connect to those institutions that do have that expertise. And if there is a space that there is no expertise, we could look to develop it.
Excellent presentation. Got a few questions out of people, so everybody was awake today. That's good. Lloyd, did you have a question?
Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate the time. And if questions arise too after we're gone, I'm one of those people that after I think about something, I know I always have questions after the fact. Please connect with us. I am going to hand these all out if that's okay. So a little bit more about the work we're doing with drones, but also about the Regional Innovation Network. And if you connect with Chelsea or connect with me or connect with Sean, we'll all make sure that you get to where you need to be. So don't worry about like, oh, who do I need to talk to about what? We will make sure that you get connected to the right person.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to present.
I see that drone, I think, Darcy. Yeah, the ceiling and said it was like it was snow on it.
Can you just see Lori going, what are you doing?
Thank you, good presentation.
Thank you very much. That's good. I wonder if Cypress County shouldn't get staff to bring back an idea that we make a motion to get these guys going.
Better than not having enough.
Thanks, guys. No. That's the US one. What's the Canadian one? Dragon's Den, yeah. All right, we are back to 9. Just before we start 9.1, Kim made a good motion, or a good mention there. Do you want us to make a motion to bring something back to get involved with that?
Or a motion to direct administration to look into a partnership regarding looking at the wood load or whatever it is.
Just it gives you a direction to go forward with it? Yep. Richard, you're making that motion?
Tell me what we're doing again? Sorry, I was on a different page here.
Direct administration to work with these folks to look at a project in regards to fire loads.
Fire load in Cypress County.
Forest management.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Cypress Hills, there we go.
Yeah, that sounds great. And then from there, who knows where it goes. But that is a scary area, so the more we learn, the better off we'll be.
Just wanted to throw that out there before we went on with everything and forgot about it. So, okay, Richard has a motion on the floor for staff to bring back ideas, whether we go forward on looking into them helping us with the, yeah. Okay, any questions? Vote. That's carried. 9.1, Tarlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agricultural Service Board Inspector appointments on page 72. So it's the Ag Pests Act, the Weed Control Act, and the Soil Conservation Act. The recommended motion is to approve all of those folks. And it is an annual appointment, and the folks have just begun the summer term.
Okay, Shane's making that motion. Any questions on it? Questions from anybody else? Vote. It's carried. 9.2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 74, road cancellation plan 2310368, 3rd Ave Extension, Dunmore. The recommended motion, the Council Direct Administration submit a cancellation of road plan 2310368 to Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors to be consolidated into the adjacent title. There's background information on 74, and if you have any questions, Ken and Kayleen would love to answer.
Yeah. Michelle's making that motion. Any questions on it? Not seeing any. Vote. Carried. 9.3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 77, the recommended motion that council approved policy ADM for naming rights of infrastructure as presented. There's background information and the policy for council's consideration. And if you have any questions, Beth would love to answer.
Somebody want to make a motion on? Dustin? Any questions? Oh, sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
First off, I gotta say that this is a great idea. You did a really good job. I guess I have a couple. The first one is, if this goes into place, is the boardroom in the new Urban Resource Center still going to be named after Rhonda Woodward?
I believe that's the current, that's the current.
I was just called a couple of times on that when somebody else read it and they said, well, does that mean that it's not going to be named after her?
Yeah, that, there's no options there.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay. And then the second one is there's pictures of the playgrounds on page 87, I do believe. Hang on, let me get there. Okay. The two parks in Dunmore, isn't that the same park? Like a picture of this, there's one over on the new side and then the Sunshine Park, but that park is the same picture.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that was another question I was asked. Yeah, they are. Well, there's two different parks there, but this particular picture is a picture of the same park.
Yeah, just a different angle of it. Oh, it is the same angle, just further away.
Just further away.
Yeah. 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 Okay, any other questions?
Well, there's a couple of grammatical errors, but if you want, I'll tell you about those later. Other than that, I'm good.
Blaine?
I guess, so are these numbers, are they like recommended numbers? Are they written in stone or?
So this document is just a sample of what it could be. It doesn't have to be accepted as it is. It's just nothing but a sample. All of the numbers are based off research that I did from comparable municipalities and organizations across Canada. So all of the numbers are just a recommendation. They can totally be changed. They're just kind of based on what I saw from other similar documents around the province and Canada.
The first step would be to approve the policy.
Well, I was going to say, because, you know, some of the numbers might scare, like, so people or other municipalities, they actually put a number in then, because I just worry that some of them might scare people away, you know? I just think if it was left more generic, that you might get more.
Yeah. It can be, anything can be brought in here and presented to us and we can accept it. It's just kind of a guideline to give people an idea.
I know you're concerned about the Brosland and the cattle lounge at the complex, but
25,000 is pretty cheap.
Any other questions? Richard? Keith?
I like what we've done because right now we would just pick numbers out of the air, and that's hard to give the public any ideas on what we actually want or need, and it's something that we probably should have had before, and it's great that you did that research and gave us some ideas, so I like it.
Keith, you had something?
Yeah, so is this something that has been asked for? Like to name stuff after people or?
Well, we did the Dunmore one already.
Yeah.
We don't have a policy. So EDF donated for the Dunmore rink, that's
Okay.
the roof and that. So they have the branding rights for that.
Oh, I see. So this is something that actually we need.
Yes.
Yes, we need guiding principles.
Kim?
Through the chair, I think when we look at numbers like this, they look really big, but when they're broken down into a 10, 20 year, then it becomes, and so that's what corporations would look at. So like $1 million over 20 years might only be $50,000 a year, so.
Any other questions? Not seeing any other questions, ask for the vote. That's carried. 9.4, Darlene?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appointment of Weed Act Appeal Committee. The recommended motion that council appoint Wade Watson, Todd Reed, and Nigel Pimlett to the Weed Control Act Appeal Committee. The background information is starting on page 91. Do you have any questions?
Lloyd's moving it. Any questions on it? Pretty self-explanatory. Not seeing any? Vote? Carried. 9.5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appointment for appointment dates for the Agricultural Pest Appeal Committee, page 93. The recommended motion is to move the reappointment, the same 6 council members to the Ag Pest Act Appeal Committee for the 2023 calendar year, and it's on page 93, the background information.
Okay, Shane's moving that. Any questions? Vote? That's carried. 9.6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rec 2, the annual grants that are distributed. It's on page 95 and to follow. The recommended motion that council approve Rec Policy 2, Recreation Annual Grants as presented. It is amended to reflect what was given out at the last council meeting.
Yep, perfect. Blaine's moving that one. Any questions on it? Vote? That's carried. 9.7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wildland interface deployment, it starts on page 100. The recommended motion that council direct administration to allocate future surplus, less expenditures from all wildland urban interface deployments to the fire and emergency services equipment replacement plan. There is substantial information to follow.
Michelle's moving that. Any questions on it? Oh, sorry, Keith. Go ahead.
So this is the amount in red. This is the amount that was billed for sending our fire squad north,
The apparatus, yeah.
the apparatus. And so we have to submit that to who? Or do we get, does that come from the Alberta government then?
That comes from the Alberta, that's a prescribed rate, and it comes from the Alberta government.
Okay.
To Cypress.
Okay. Any other questions? Vote. She took my little button away. Keith. The two old timers over there. Richard. Carried. 9.8, Tara Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Policy FP05, paid on-call compensation system. So this is an A or B, so option A or B. So option A is the Cypress County firefighters that are deployed will be compensated 100% billable rates as per signed agreement between the Alberta government and Cypress, or Cypress County firefighters that are deployed will be compensated 95% billable rates as per signed agreement between the Alberta government and Cypress. The 5% reduction will help offset the costs of the county WCB wages and additional PPE that was assigned to support firefighters. So the recommendation, don't commonly do it, but the information that emergency services gathered was that some municipalities are doing the 50 full or the 50 minus 5%. So that's the information we got.
Richard.
I'd like to make the motion that we go with the 95% rate. There is a cost to the county, and I think if we don't acknowledge that, we will be questioned on why we would pay 100% of what we're getting paid. So, and I realize that our units are getting paid, but we also have a huge investment in those units, and this is a little bonus to bring back on the other part. So that's why I am going with the 95%. I think that's more than fair.
Dustin?
I'll respectfully disagree with that. And my reason behind it is WCB we already pay, regardless of whether they'd be up north or not. And as for the PPE that was assigned, the only reason additional PPE would have been assigned is if they didn't have it in the first place, which they should have. So to me, billing them out at what they're getting paid makes perfect sense to me. At the 5%, we made $156,000 on our equipment in 13 days. So I'm thinking $2 an hour is not going to make or break this municipality, and we should be paying them what they're getting paid from the government.
Any other comments? I think the WCB that you're talking about, or that Richard's talking about, is, yeah, we pay it on the original 20, but when you go over and you go up to the 40 or the $50 an hour, your WCB rates go up according to what you pay out on labor. So no.
So WCB was paid on these on firefighters even before they were getting paid. They were always covered under WCB. It's
volunteering for the municipality.
Yes, but we're still paying it. Regardless, we pay it.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that Steve can shed some light on that, on how it works.
Yeah, and that'll take a little bit more research, but the paid on call, we do submit a WCB claim. And I think the 5% represents more of the administrative cost in the increase of Jason's administration, Kim's administration, Terilyn's administration, my administration towards that. No opinion either way, but I think a typical fees and administration, 5% is about the right amount in other going-ons of the municipality. Tax recovery, for example, we can hold back 5%, but.
Richard?
As a former business owner, I think that if I could have kept those costs at 5% for employees, I would have loved that. But most of the time, it was in the 25 to 30%. And some of the courses that I took, like, you know, you tried to keep it at 30% and under. And I'm not saying that we're running a business, but I'm not. I just want to, and it wasn't just WCP. It was the idea that there's costs in there that are hidden. There's administration, there's overhead, there's a whole bunch of other things. And to go with 95%, I think is more than generous. It's more than fair, because we do have costs that go with it, right? And I'm not including the amount of money that those units brought in. Like I said, we have millions of dollars invested, and that's just a little bit of a bonus to come back. It's not unreasonable to ask to hold a little bit back for that work.
I don't think bonus is the right word there. I believe that they're houring out, they're still being used, so you're still wearing and tearing on them. Dustin?
I just believe that holding anything back on it is unacceptable. It just doesn't make any sense to me why we would do it. Being as we already pay our administration, it's a volunteer position still essentially to go up there. It's volunteer. You don't have to go. We're paying this WCB. We pay WCB for all the firefighters. I get paid. They pay WCB for me, even though I'm not eligible to collect WCB ever. It's just something that it's a cost of doing business that we have running a fire department. The fact that these guys are going up there voluntarily to do this, sure, they're getting paid by the government to do it, but it was an ask of the municipality to send them up there, and which was an ask of the government. We should give them the wage that they deserve. And, 5% is what it is, but we're essentially not an employer of this. It's the government's the employer, and the government's setting the dollar figure for the wage. And all we're doing by that is we're profiting from the people we've sent up to do this, in my mind, if we keep that 5%.
Anybody else before Richard rebuttals?
Well, it's just my comment was that unless things have changed, WCB rates was paid on the amount the hours were worked, Dustin. So yes, there is, when they do work, those, like the volunteer stuff, but as they put more hours in, there's more money to be paid into WCB. So it's not as if it's a flat rate that starts right at the spring and goes through all there. If you have people that work more hours, you pay more in.
Or get paid more, one or the other. Does anybody else have any comment? I think so. Michelle?
So we're talking about just that 5% is just for WCB, or is there other administrative costs involved in that?
Steve?
Well, I'll be the first one to admit that the WCB increasing upon additional hours, I'm not aware of that. But what I do know about specifically WCB is that it's based on the type of work that you're doing. The other costs, I don't have a dog in the fight, but the 5%, I just repeat that it's typically kind of a customary type thing, whether council decides to go with that option or not. And that 5% comes from other processes such as the tax recovery, where it takes a tremendous amount of manpower of the municipality, and you incur costs to deliver that service. That's what it would represent.
So I guess the real question that I have is the county benefiting by, like, profiting from that 5%? Or are we just kind of breaking even?
I don't think we're even breaking even. Breaking even, or are we even breaking?
It's hard to say. We haven't done the analysis, but I would say that it's 5% would be a token amount. That would be the best way I could describe it.
Robin?
I'm hearing both sides, and I'm wondering if we're maybe approaching this from the wrong angle. And by that I mean, in our master rates bylaw, do we have what we pay our local, rates are this much per deployment or per hour if they were working locally? In business, if I work my guys 8 hours plus, they go into time and a half, and if they're working on holidays, it's double time, and maybe we needed a definition of hazard pay or out-of-town pay. The problem with the approach that we're taking right now is if the billable rate in this case right now is just for labor, but down the road, the billable rate then begins to include other things, like where we provide housing or we provide all these other pieces. It complicates. If we just deal with this the way that labor law deals with it, would that not simplify? Because we're looking at it and going, well, we're making this much per hour, and that's so not accurate, because we're really not. Anybody that has staff and employees, you're actually putting 30% of it not into the pocket of the people. And so I feel like this could be dealt with more through the master rates in recognizing than specifically looking at it as a $1 per hour approach.
What, Kim? Oh, Dustin?
Well, I just did the math if you guys want to hear it. So our units up there, if we're up for 30 days straight on the hourly, on their rate that they pay a day, it's $360,000 that those units are making in a month.
We're not talking about you.
Yeah, but it's a comparable number about what the county's making. So there's $360,000 on 30 days coming back to the municipality on the cost of those units. On $40 an hour, and I know some get paid 50, we'll just figure it out on 40 for easy math. At 5% on 12-hour days on 6 people, that's $4,320 in administrative costs and WCB that we'd be taking off if we took that 5%. I don't see how it costs $4,300 a month to keep those guys up there, or for administrative costs a month in WCB. Because me paying WCB back when I used to pay, it cost me roughly $110 a month. And that was on a...
I wish I had those bills. I love that one, Dustin.
On one person, that's roughly what it is. I remember back from even when I paid wages, that's what it was.
Kim?
Thank you, through the chair. So when we were calling around to different municipalities, and that's why we put the two motions there. The province is paying any volunteer firefighter that wants to go up and assist will get $50 an hour, and they won't have any deductions. And but then when we did call, we had a mixed bag of different municipalities that were doing different things. So that's why we wanted to present this to council with the two options, option A and option B. We had no preference, but when we did look at what the province was paying, they are paying the direct 50 for the firefighters, anybody that wanted to volunteer. And so we just put the motion that was kind of more mainstream with, I think we contacted over 10 different departments, and they had a varying degree. And I don't know how they came up with that 5%, or was it more through administration, or they had direct insurance if they put an additional insurance rider on or whatever, but that could be, like Councillor Foster said, that might be on the equipment and not the people, but we just wanted to, that's why we came up with these two options. We just wanted to give some background on that.
Well, I know the cost for the WCB will go up at the end of the year when you put in what you paid out in wages. That's what you get paid, that's what you pay your premiums on, whether it's, I don't know what the county's percentage is. I know mine used to be quite high, but I had a couple claims, so yes, there is a cost, Dustin, when you're going from $20 an hour to $50 an hour. You got to take that $30 an hour and figure it in, and a percentage of the WCB comes out of that. I don't know what it is for the county, nobody seems to know, but I can guarantee you it's at least around 2 or 3%. Just for,
Yeah, we had a premium tacked on our WCB from claims 2 years ago, and I think it's just starting to come down with that core status, but.
and we're not trying to make money off of these gentlemen, we're just trying to make sure we don't outdo ourselves with the cost on that.
Well, and I agree, but I think we're making our money. And the reason I state that is on what this equipment's making. So I look at that, so $360,000 for 1 month, that paid for that wildland truck that we had no intention that we were gonna make any money for. That's the way I look at that. You know, so by us going, well, holy crap, if we're gonna be up there for whatever this deployment may be, if it's 2 months, 3 months, all year, I don't know the answer to that question. But it's going into the equipment and replacement reserves where we just put it, but that's a lot of money that's coming into this municipality. Why do we gotta take 5% on the back of the guys that volunteered to go up there and do this? Oh, I feel like we are.
Shane?
That equipment doesn't go up there for nothing. Instead of sitting in our halls here waiting for a fire, they're up there, you're getting more wear and tear on them up there. You're getting more wear and tear on the equipment up there. So they're being houred out quicker and that. And I've talked to a few guys, gentleman that was up there. He asked me about this wage thing and we discussed it, and 5% seems very fair.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments? I have a motion on the floor for, which one is it? B, sorry. No comments, I'll ask for the vote. Okay, that's carried. All right, it's lunch. Is lunch here? Did you eat it all already, Lloyd?
Mr. Chairman, all we have is the draft minutes to go in closed, and then
Yeah, well, all right, we'll go in closed. Keith is moving to go in closed. Vote. I will get this to Les.